So first, I want to start talking about a recent immigration raid that happened here in Central Texas. Essentially, the FBI says over 40 arrests were made, including minors that have alleged affiliation to the Tren de Aragua gang. What's your reaction to that?
Well, this is the direct consequence of the open borders policy of the Biden administration, led in part by the now disgraced and impeached former Secretary of Homeland Security, Mayorkas. And like this hits close to home. I mean, if you live in Austin, if you live in Hayes County in particular, we're in suburban Austin. Think about that, in Hayes County. And we have 47 arrests, including 9 minors, where we know there's narcotics operating out of a house, known affiliation with Tren de Aragua, a dangerous gang from Venezuela that has now been killing Americans. People like Jocelyn Nungre in Houston, whose wonderful mother, Alexis, has become a great champion of ending the scourge of open borders and what's happening with these dangerous gangs. And now we have activist judges that are in court trying to stop the Trump administration from figuring out how to both put these guys in jail and remove them from our country. So this should be a wake-up call. If you live in Hayes County, this is happening in Dripping Springs, Texas. 47 people operating in an apartment/house in which you've got 9 children. Imagine those circumstances, those conditions. It's just not acceptable. And God bless the Hayes County Sheriff's Office, ICE, FBI, the Texas Department of Public Safety. My good friend Chris Olivares came up and was my guest at the State of the Union here in D.C. They're doing great work, but this should be a wake-up call to all Texans that we need to deal with this and those open borders need to be addressed.
Congressman, does it worry you at all that 9 minors were taken in this major operation?
Well, it worries me that those 9 minors were in an environment where they had to be removed, right? The arrest is one way to take all these people out and now deal with these 9 minors. I have great confidence in Texas's leadership and the local authorities to figure out how to make sure these minors are cared for. But imagine the conditions they were operating in, right? This was a house in which there were significant narcotics operating out of it. They're affiliated with a dangerous gang. This is a gang that was threatening people in Aurora, Colorado. We just had Cindy Romero, this wonderful woman who came in from Colorado. I met her last summer in August when I flew out there, met with her about all of these people who are being threatened in their own apartment complex in Aurora, but yet being ignored by the then existing Biden administration and frankly, the Democratic leadership of Colorado. Now, look, I mean, not everything has to be political, and I get it. I understand that people don't like us to politicize everything, but how in the hell did this happen? It happened because the previous administration decided to leave our borders open. That's what happened. And now we're having to deal with the consequences of it. This is in my backyard. This is literally in Hayes County. This is in the school district right there in Hayes County, Texas, where my family lives and operates, as is all the other people that are there in Dripping Springs. That's insanity. And, this has to stop. And God bless Tom Homan, the President of the United States, for going out there and doing what needed to be done. But there are thousands of these now all across the country that we've got to go root out and, yes, deport. Right now, today, the Department of Justice is having to go in and defend and figure out how to deal with the lawsuits, trying to stop the removal of these dangerous gangs. They need to be removed, and the president's right to do it.
Yeah. Congressman, do you think that people of Hayes County, people of Central Texas should be grateful? FBI Director Kash Patel said this was a successful operation. We had Governor Greg Abbott praising law enforcement who went in and made these arrests. Do you think that people should feel protected and grateful right now?
Well, I think they ought to be grateful for those who were willing to do it. And I appreciate Governor Abbott, DPS, Kash Patel, the FBI, obviously ICE, the great leadership at DHS, Tom Homan at the White House, all of them that were involved in doing this. But it shouldn't have to be done. We shouldn't be in this position, but we are here now. And I think we've got some adults now that are in charge that will actually try to protect our communities. But this ought to be a wake-up call that we need permanent change. When you had millions of people dumped into the United States, of which we know tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, had significant criminal backgrounds, the prisons that were emptied out from Venezuela, then this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's not just going to be these 47. There are people right now operating in Hayes County, in Austin, in East Austin, in North Austin, in Williamson County. It's everywhere. San Antonio has been dealing with, replete with it. There were TDA buses right near the airport in North San Antonio last year. I went down there. I looked at them, talked to law enforcement. We're trying to stop it. But, man, it is so bad and so intertwined in our communities now. It's going to take thorough, coordinated state, local, and federal operations to do it. And God bless them for doing it, and I appreciate it very much.
Are you worried at all that these people who have been arrested now facing deportation are not going to get due process and they're not going to get a chance in court to maybe prove their innocence and not affiliation with Tren de Aragua?
Well, let's remember that almost everybody that we're talking about here, to the best of my knowledge, are all people that have been gone through the process. We know their affiliation with TDA. We know that they're illegal. And in case, for example, of this one individual from Maryland that people said, oh, this is a guy that was like swept up into, it's like, hold on a second. It was a part of MS-13. It was literally affiliated with MS-13, had an order of removal from the Department of Justice. Yes, there was some proceeding that said, well, maybe that guy needs to get another hearing. But my point is that when you're in this kind of environment where there are 47 people in the county in which I live because of what the previous administration did to endanger us, I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep over somebody who is here illegally, came here illegally, was a part of MS-13, and somehow wasn't a part of the right list with respect to the Aliens Act and the removal, when in fact this is somebody that I have no problem removing from the United States. So I trust the administration to ensure we're not sweeping anybody up. No American citizens are going to get swept up, but people who came here illegally, right? I mean, I'm going to defer to the administration to make determinations about who needs to be removed for our safety. And I think there'll be plenty of due process to ensure that those citizens are swept up in that.
One of my last questions for you on this topic, Congressman, is we haven't been able to find evidence or proof from ICE or federal agencies that these people arrested, the 47, have any connection really with TDA. Are you concerned at all? I know that some elected officials in Hayes in our area can't find that evidence either. Does that concern you?
Well, look, I trust law enforcement to do their job and ensure that bad actors are not on the streets. I know that there was plenty of evidence of what was going on there in terms of narcotics and so forth. I can't say more that hasn't been fully released publicly, but it wasn't good. And we have strong belief, to the best of my understanding from their reporting, that they're affiliated with TDA. And we know TDA is operating everywhere in the state of Texas because of open borders. So, look, law enforcement will make sure they're following the law and ensuring that they're making the case that needs to be made. But they wouldn't have arrested 47 people. I can promise you that the sheriff of Hayes County would not have allowed, the arrest of 47 people, and wouldn't have been working with federal law enforcement if there weren't serious issues and concerns with who they're affiliated with and what they're doing and the criminal activity that was at play. And I'm sure we're going to learn more in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah. Congressman, is there anything else you want to add on this topic that maybe I haven't asked you, but you think is important to note?
I think we covered it. I appreciate it.
Do you mind if I ask you just a few more questions on separate topics?
Quickly, depending on what it is, because I do have to get somewhere, but fire away if there's something that we can do quickly.
Okay, perfect. Will do. I wanted to start off by asking you about DOJ layoffs. We know that several federal layoffs have happened in Central Texas, whether that be in different realms of charity work, whether that be in the judicial branch. How do you feel about these layoffs made by DOJ as they say they're trying to eliminate waste?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of waste in the federal government that needs to be eliminated. There are so many different contracts, different organizations that are duplicative. There are, software programs that are being duplicated. There are people who have software licenses for people who don't even exist. There are people who are not showing up to work on time. There are people who aren't showing up to work at all. We had one guy who I know who was in an office. He went back to his desk that he was in 4 years ago, and he went and sat down on his computer and he picked up the phone, and all the speed dial was exactly the same as he left it 4 years ago. Look, the American people didn't send President Trump to Washington to allow the bureaucracy to continue the way it was. We're $36.x trillion in debt and growing. We've got bureaucrats all over the country that are interfering with the lives of the American people. So we need to remove a lot of these bureaucrats. And don't get me started on the NGOs and the nonprofits, which were very much abusing the very process, frankly, abusing children. They were part of the sex trafficking trade, all in the name of compassion. They were running people into our country, making money off of federal tax dollars going to the United Nations and outside groups, going to NGOs to move people into the United States out of compassion. Talk to me about the children in the sex trafficking trade, whether that was compassionate. Talk to me about Jocelyn Nungray and whether it was compassionate that she lost her life at the hands of NGOs affiliating with the radical Biden regime. So yeah, we fire a few federal bureaucrats, sign me up. We need more of it.
Some of those layoffs affected the FAA, and some people are worried about the safety when it comes to their air flight, especially with low air traffic controllers in Central Texas. How do you feel about the layoff of some people who work at our airports?
Well, look, the previous regime was putting people in the FAA that had no business being there in many respects. We've got an administration there trying to make sure we've got the right people at the job. And I trust them to do that. And I trust the Transportation Secretary Duffy to get the job done right. He's been very public about what they're doing on this, having the right people at the helm, doing the job that needs to be done. So, you've got to have efficient and effective leadership at the helm. Look, President Reagan fired, I don't know, but 800 or something air traffic controllers in 1981. And everybody said, oh, that guy's a crazy cowboy. And it was important. And he sent a shot back at the unions, and he made people show up to work. And our government got better for it in the early 80s. So I think this is more of the same. We need a little bit of rough and tumble business here in the government bureaucracy. People are getting fat and happy in their jobs off the back of the American taxpayer, frankly, often not even showing up to work. So the great men and women that are there, I say hi to all the folks at TSA when I go through the airport, all the great people that are doing a great job trying to protect our country. God bless them. But there's a lot of people who need to be thinned out, and this administration is working through that.
Last topic, probably last question. Tariffs went in place yesterday. We know that there are upwards of 45% tariffs on different countries. And some people here in the United States are worried that that is going to make inflation and costs skyrocket for them on a daily basis. What's your reaction to these tariffs put in place by President Trump?
Yeah, the president has great latitude as the commander in chief and as the chief executive, and engaging in negotiation with our foreign, counterparts and fellow nation states, that we make sure that they're not taking us for a ride, right? And so he's engaging in reciprocal tariffs. We've got countries, including Canada and others, that have these massive tariffs on a lot of American products. The president's saying, wait a minute, why is that the case? So he's putting in reciprocal tariffs. So, well, you want to tariff our goods at 45%? Guess what? We're going to tariff yours at 45%. Now, look, does that cause some stress? Does that cause some transition pain? Yeah. I met with a bunch of restaurateurs from Texas today. And I am, monitoring and paying attention to make sure that what's going to happen with inflation and the cost of goods, I am concerned about it and making sure that it's done right. But we do need to put pressure on our counterparts and our fellow, nations to do it right. And also to allow the president to engage in diplomacy and be able to put pressure on Venezuela and Mexico and other countries to stand up and secure the border and stop fentanyl from pouring into our country. So I'm going to give the president a lot of latitude here, but we got to check it. We got to watch it. I'm not interested in inflationary tariffs in the long haul, but what I am interested in is resetting the playing field. And I think the president's right to do that.
Last question. Do you worry that this will make things unaffordable for automotive dealers, for restaurateurs, like you said? I think they're really nervous about these tariffs. And do you worry about your constituents who might feel the heat and brunt of it?
I think a lot of people are paying attention to the tariffs, and they should. I'm one of them, to make sure that our businesses, our restaurants, automobile dealerships, not just the dealerships, the people have to buy the cars, that they can still afford those. But let me just point out, we've been dealing with massive rampant inflation because we've had a lot of bad policies, a lot of regulatory policies. You want to drive down inflation? Everyone's focused on the tariffs. What about the Inflation Reduction Act and all of the ridiculous regulations that the previous administration put in place, where we've got hill country getting bulldozed for solar panels outside of Bandera, pissing off a lot of my constituents, using up water for battery facilities outside of Gillespie, or in Gillespie County, outside of Fredericksburg. And they're going to then complain about, we might have some inflation on tariffs. I'm monitoring tariffs. We got to pay attention to that, but we got to stop the regulatory inflation that is killing the average American who can't afford goods and services. So look, I need to check and be responsible on behalf of my constituents, all of government, regardless of party, to make sure that they're being represented fairly. And that includes tariffs. But let's be clear. What we're dealing with is inflation being driven heavily by regulatory policy by the previous regime and Democrats that we're trying to unwind.
Congressman, thank you so much for your time. So well said. I appreciate it. And of course, your comms team for being so accommodating and helpful to me. I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.